Hello YouTube, Alan back with another video, and this is part 2 of my top 20 Legend of Zelda games. In part 1 we went from 20 down to 11, and today we're going to count down the top 10, starting with perhaps a controversial entry, and that is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which I was very excited for. Bought it on the Switch and the Wii U. Didn't want to miss out this time. Great game, absolutely superb game. If anyone has a Switch, I would definitely recommend picking up, trying it out. Why have I got it down at number 10? Well, because I prefer 9 games to it, simple as that. But ultimately, to me, this doesn't actually feel like a Legend of Zelda game. It feels more like a new experience, a different type of thing. It doesn't... my favourite aspects of The Legend of Zelda has always been things like the dungeons. And by far and away, the weakest aspect of Breath of the Wild are the dungeons. They're just completely they just go straight out of my mind. Like, there's 4 divine beasts that are the key dungeons, but I'd say out of the 120 hours I played this game, which just shows you how much I enjoyed it. I did like this game. 120 hours playing the game. I'd say I spent about maybe 3-4 hours in the dungeons tops. Okay, yes, there are the shrines, they do add a lot more gameplay, but there's a lot of repeat shrines where you're doing the same kind of combat challenges. And the shrines share the same theme. At least the vast majority of them do. So, whereas in traditional Zelda dungeons, each dungeon tends to do its own thing. It may be elemental and you may see them game for game, but each one feels different to the last. The shrines feel exactly the same. But anyway, that's the negative. The positive, let's focus on the positive. The world in this is insane. It is massive and it does beg to be explored, and you can pretty much explore everything. You know, it's all about the world. Forget about dungeons, forget about maybe some of the traditional Zelda trappings. This is all about that open world and kind of exploring. If you enjoy that, you'll love this. The more you like that type of experience, the more you'll enjoy this, and it'll be higher on your list. For me, I'm more keen on the traditional formula, so this is why it's down at number 10. Oh, in fact, it is behind a spin-off series. Well, not a spin-off series, just a spin-off entry, I guess. Hyrule Warriors. So it came out on the 3DS and the Wii U. Personally, I prefer the Wii U. I think the 3DS has a bit more content, but yeah, it's definitely, I prefer it on the kind of the console experience is better. Just, it's the type of thing that you want to see, because you're basically one man versus an army scenario, so you want to see it on the bigger screen. HD visuals definitely add to it. I really enjoyed this. I spent several hundred hours. I spent 120 hours in Breath of the Wild, but I think I spent double that on Hyrule Warriors. This is the Zelda game I've spent the most time in, no questions asked. And it's not even a Zelda game. It's like a samurai Warriors game. I'm not too sure about the series. Koei Tecmo anyway developed it. They did a great job kind of taking the Zelda stuff and applying it to that formula. And I bought the DLC for this, which I normally wouldn't. And I spent so long playing it, I didn't even finish half the DLC because it's unbelievable. I could totally see you spending 1,000 hours to try and 100% this game. It's insane. My recommendation is play it. If it's your cup of tea, like, it might take a little time to grow on you, as it did me. I was playing through the campaign thinking, I'm not too sure about this. And then the more I played it, the more I enjoyed it. And especially as I started to do the kind of adventure mode, it really kind of, okay, I'm building up my character and, you know, evolving. I get it. I'm starting to learn the combos. Not for everyone. Certainly, I think most people would probably put Breath of the Wild above this. But for me, I just spent so much time and I just loved it. It was great. And weirdly, the 3DS version, which I got afterwards, maybe I was just done with this game, this formula. I just couldn't get into it again. I think maybe, I don't know, I thought it was the small controls, the cramp thing, but it could also just be when you spend so many 100 hours on what is essentially hack and slash, you may be hacked and slashed yourself. Next up, number 8, we have another handheld entry. We have A Link Between Worlds, the kind of pseudo-sequel to A Link to the Past. A really, really good game. And it was a game where you could tell Nintendo were trying to break the chains of the formula where you go from Dungeon A to Dungeon B to Dungeon C in a very linear fashion. They were trying to bring back that you can go and do anything in any order you want. So you don't get the key items in a dungeon. You rent them or eventually buy them. And you can go to any of the dungeons at any time. That's really cool. It's a nice change of pace. It does have a downside in that the dungeons don't really feel that there's any progression. The kind of this, later dungeons feel about as difficult as the first dungeons. They don't really seem to ramp up that much, and they all seem quite small, quite bite-sized. There's some very clever dungeons. They use the kind of paper. It's kind of like the Paper Mario thing, except it's not all time paper. You kind of fold against the wall and you can move around cracks and whatnot. They use that to some clever puzzles, and that's really cool. It also is a cool world because it's the Link to the Past world, so it was good. But it also felt perhaps a little too safe at times. But then again, it's a great game. Like, it was based on a great world, and it plays really well. It's nowadays you can pick it up dirt cheap. I think it's available on the 3DS kind of classics range for €15 or something like that. Absolutely worth picking it up if you can. They're a great game. Now the following was actually what made me put this list together, because it was a big surprise. It was something that I did not ever expect to say. But in number, was it 10, 9, 8, 6, 7? In number 7, we have Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword ahead of Breath of the Wild. I must be insane. Surely that can't be right. This is the most linear Zelda game you could possibly imagine. But then again, I think I prefer the linear aspect, or at least a degree of linearity. I thought Skyward Sword had a heap of problems. I still do. But when I thought back on it, I said, you know what? I actually enjoyed huge parts of that game. It has some incredible dungeon design. Especially the pirate ship. That is one of the best Zelda dungeons in ages. And it has an interesting aesthetic that does kind of work for itself. It has great... I love the music. The main theme, the Ballad of Goddess, is superb. It really does feel kind of epic. And even though the main kind of... The kind of sky area is quite... There's not much to do. There is a sense at times, especially when the music's kind of soaring, that you are soaring. Again, like some of the other Zeldas that before, it kind of feels like there is an absolute masterpiece that was just kind of, if they tweaked a few things, they could have made one of the best games ever. The other aspect of the game that I don't like is the Wii motion controls. Personally, I feel that just didn't work for me. I found I had to recalibrate a lot. I didn't find it particularly accurate. It was more of a detriment to the experience than a boon. And the fact that they've completely rolled those back now pretty much tells you, yeah, it wasn't that critical, or wasn't that important. At the time, you were trying to advertise it, oh, you'll never want to play Zelda again without motion controls. Well, apparently now you're playing all Zeldas without motion controls. It wasn't that great a thing. Between that and the kind of somewhat linear, somewhat fluffed aspects, or padded out aspects, detract from the experience. But beyond that, it is a superb game, and one of the better Zelda stories too. Zelda isn't always known for it, but this is actually pretty good, and Zelda plays a nice little role in it. I would actually love to see them remake this again, just like The Adventures of Link. I'd love to see them remake this. Get rid of the motion control stuff, maybe cut or prune some of the kind of padded sections, and you could have a really top-notch game that I'd love to replay. And yes, I actually prefer it to Breath of the Wild. Strange. And perhaps stranger still, in number 6, I have Diminished Cap. This is one that is very much a forgotten game, and again, maybe it's just it was the first handheld Zelda game that I properly played through to completion. I absolutely adore this game. I think it's brilliant. It's very small, very compact, but that kind of works in its favour. If you treat it like a small, bite-sized, almost Zelda adventure that has all of the kind of fine-tuned aspects of the traditional Zelda formula. You have your kind of 4 main dungeons. You have your tightly compressed overworld. You have most of your characters have some sort of purposes or meaning. It kind of moves along in a good clip. You move through the game pretty fast, and there isn't too much waste, except for some of the Kinstone stuff or some of the little hunting for, maybe that's a little overdone, but the rest is really, really well put together. There's some good challenges, really nice visuals for Game Boy Advance. It's kind of like, yeah, they took the 2D Zelda stuff, really refined it. It might not be as epic as some of the games, but it's a great fun experience. And if you're looking, because you're not always looking to spend 120 hours playing a Breath of the Wild. Sometimes you just want a shorter experience that you can jump in and out of, and Diminished Cap really fits that bill. I'd actually say it's a great kind of introductory or beginner Zelda title. But now we're getting to the kind of serious end. And at number 5 we have the Wind Waker. I would say more specifically, it's up behind me, that where to go, the Wind Waker HD. The Wind Waker I really enjoyed back in the GameCube days. In fact, strangely enough, I had to be convinced to buy it because I loved the prior Zelda games. Obviously, they're coming up on the list. But I skipped Wind Waker for an age, and one of my friends, no, you have to play it. It's really, really good. And I did. I enjoyed it. But I did find some things like the sailing was such a drag, having to change the wind all the time, and it was kind of slow. So that kind of took away from the experience. I remember literally at one point, I left the thing just sailing away, went off and made tea, and came back. I was still sailing. I didn't even get knocked out of the water, Anton. It was just like, yep, that's how kind of inactive the kind of Great Sea was. But in the HD version, they introduced a fast sail, or swift sail, whatever it's called, where you can change the wind and you can go much faster, and that really, really helps the game. Plus, they reduce some of that kind of the Triforce kind of fetch quest at the end of the game. So, in the same way, I'd like to see them make changes to Skyward Sword and a remaster. They're the type of changes. They really improve the game. So this one actually moved back further up my list with the HD remaster. It's absolutely the version I played today. And okay, at the time the visuals were controversial, the cell shading and whatnot, but it absolutely ages really, really well. You can play the GameCube version and it looks good to this day. Yes, the HD version looks a lot better because you got the 16:9 presentation and it's in HD, but the GameCube one really has aged remarkably well, and a lot of that is down to the cell shaded visuals. So they may not have been what people wanted back in the time, but by God did they age very well. So on to the top 4, and in 4th we have a game that I just can't stop buying. It is Twilight Princess. So yeah, we had it on the GameCube, we had it on the Wii, and then we had the best version, easily the best version. It is the HD remaster. So a bit like Wind Waker, they remade Twilight Princess, and again they tried to kind of largely tidy up the visuals, and they pruned a little bit of the tears, collecting the tears in the Twilight realm. There wasn't as much that they had to fine tune. The biggest weakness about Twilight Princess, in my opinion, is that it has kind of a slow beginning. It takes a while to get going, but once you get going, the pace actually speeds up quite dramatically. And yes, it's very formulaic. It follows the kind of pattern set by A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time. But in my opinion, when you play that formula once every 3 or 4 or 5 years sometimes, that's absolutely okay. It's okay to like a formula and to follow that formula. And this follows the formula and does a really good job of it. Some of the dungeons, like the Snow Peak one, completely different type of environment than you're used to in a Zelda game, and kind of makes sense within the world. A lot of times the dungeons sometimes feel like, oh, and here we have a fire dungeon, or here we have something. But a lot of those places, like the Arbiter's Grounds as well, they kind of felt like embedded into the world. Great game. I mean, I've played it 3 times already, and I'll probably play it again in the future. So top quality game. Number 3, we have the best 2D Zelda game. Whoop, upside down. We have A Link to the Past. SNES and GBA. The SNES version is the best version in my opinion. Still love it to this day. This was my first Zelda experience. I remember playing it on my friend's SNES. In fact, it was all of our first Zelda experience. We'd never played the franchise before. Incredibly excited, and even just the little things like the little discoveries and get that discovery sound was like, oh my god, this was something different. I love the beginning where you have the rain effect and it's foreboding, and again, when you're used to playing back in the day SNES games like Mario, and it's all happy-go-lucky, and this was different. It set a sense of fear, and once you got through the kind of the opening area of the castle, your quest unfolds, and of course you think, oh, I gotta go across the map here, there, and there, and you cross the map to do these 3 kind of the dungeons, the key dungeons. You think, geez, I must be going up to face the final boss. And then they pull the rug under your feet and say, no, that was the primer. Now the game starts. You're going to the Dark World, and now you have 6 main dungeons. Is it 6? I can't remember the number. You better forget what you know. This is where we get serious. That was a great twist, and by God, this is a great game that has aged absolutely tremendously. You can still, again, compared to something like Breath of the Wild, it's a lot smaller. You can go through it a lot quicker, but that doesn't really harm it. It's a formula that really works, and there is actually a lot of freedom. You can tackle a lot of the Dark World dungeons in any order you like, or sometimes, as I did, I couldn't beat the bosses when I was younger. So what I ended up doing is I went into the dungeon, managed to get the item, exited the dungeon, get out of dodge, and I'd go elsewhere in the map so I could actually get kind of heart containers and stuff like that, and again come back when I was more powered. So I actually had about 3 or 4 dungeons where I had partially completed and actually had to return. Nowadays, it's not so big a deal. I just whipped through the game. But back then, I actually did utilize that capacity to kind of do bits and come back and go off. So it is more open than kind of perhaps it was given, or it's taught of today. But anyway, the top 2D Zelda game and one of the top games of all time is A Link Between... nope, it's A Link to the Past. I'm getting confused. So we're into the top 2. Kind of no surprises. And this was tough because I flip-flop on my top Zelda game all the time. So what I'm going to say today, who knows, maybe tomorrow I'll feel something differently. But in number 2, we have The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. When this came out on the N64, it was near the end of the console's kind of life. You had to have the expansion pack, which luckily I had for Donkey Kong 64. But I was so into it. Because of number 1, there's no point hiding it, it's obviously Ocarina of Time. I absolutely wanted to delve straight back into the world, and this did not disappoint. The first time around, I was a little, okay, this is weird. The 72 hours thing, resetting, it didn't really gel with me, I'll be honest. There was a little bit of, I like a little more permanency in what my actions do to the world. And it was funny enough, it was only when I was actually helping my sister play the game, kind of being kind of like a guide. We were going through a guide, because she was much younger at the time. I think she was, I don't know, only 8 or 9. So this is kind of one of her first kind of full-form video games to go through. I started to see it differently. I started to see it through this kind of like, it wasn't about the kind of this big open world, and it was all about the characters and building up the relationships and learning their stories, because every single person has a story. They have a meaning. It's all logged in a notebook. And I was like, I get it this time. So when I played it again on the N64 and loved it. But really, when they brought it back on the N64 or on the 3DS, that's when it was like, this is the perfect way to experience this game. And if anyone's going to play it now, this is a great game. And if you have it on the N64, brilliant. By all means, it's a great way to play a game. But if you had to choose, the 3DS version is definitely the way to go. It has kind of, again, like a lot of the remakes, refined some of the issues. So the saving mechanism, you can save wherever you want. If you want to speed up the time to a certain hour, you can do that. So there's a lot less wasting around. So it actually kind of reduces, and some might see this as a negative, and I thought this was going to be a negative. It reduces some of the tension of the 72-hour clock. But the truth is, that's kind of fake tension. It was kind of like just a limited design, because like you could slow down the time and then you just ended up waiting for events. So this kind of streamlines the process and does it with some great visuals, and really kind of, I think, lets people experience a game that was somewhat overlooked compared to its predecessor, because a lot of people were starting to move on, away from the N64 at the time. It like didn't sell anywhere near as well. Yeah, it was well received on the 3DS and definitely worth picking up. So of course, its twin is number 1. Where are you? Oops, I'm dropping them. It's The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And this is, again, this was my second Zelda game. This was after A Link to the Past. I'm very forgetful today. A Link to the Past, and I was absolutely could not wait. I was following all of the N64 mags at the time, or rather just N64 mag, all the different previews, looking at the game come along, and could not wait for this game. And it was one of the very few cases, and maybe I was at the right age, where it did not disappoint. What they produced lived up to the hype and then some. The only little tiny blip was when I got completely stuck in the water temple. Like so many others, I just could not find one of those damn keys, which was in the underneath the floating block thing. But even then, I spent so long playing this game, and as soon as I finished it, it was straight back in. We're gonna play it again. We're gonna enjoy that story, and it has aged. Like, okay, visually, maybe some people don't like the visuals, how they've aged. I actually think it has a certain charm, kind of an early 3D charm, but it doesn't have warping or distortions. It may be primitive in terms of its polygons, but it actually still is a solid looking game. I like it anyway. But if you don't like the N64 original, you can of course play the 3D version. Yep, 3DS version. There we go. That's it. It's a great remaster. Just keeps the same aesthetic style, but kind of tidies it up. Adds in boss rush and adds in the kind of the mirror mode. Again, if you got a 3DS, you should really pick this up. And it's easy now because they've re-released it on the classics range to get it. At one point, it was getting quite difficult, but when you're talking about a game that is very, very commonly up on like Metacritic, lists and best of lists, it's no coincidence. This is a superbly crafted game. Yes, it basically takes the Link to the Past formula and does it in 3D, but there's nothing wrong with that. A Link to the Past was a superb game. Presenting that superb game in another format, there's nothing wrong. Like, it is absolutely great, and it also it was able to use 3D to do things that you could not do in 2D. Like, some of the dungeons use a lot of more verticality, and they were able to kind of present spaces that you couldn't do in a 2D game, and that kind of really helped kind of flesh the world out, and that's what kind of pushes it above, say, A Link to the Past, in my view, anyway. But anyway, there we have it. My number one. It's Ocarina of Time. A kind of a common game, but yeah, I had to do some that were conventional. If I got Breath of the Wild down there and the original Legend of Zelda further down, I got to have some conventionality to my list. So that's my thoughts on the top 20 Legend of Zelda games. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, see you soon.